Hello and welcome. I'm so excited today to welcome Vance, who's going to chat with us about pre orders and launching when you have a new product that's coming out. So, I am so stoked to hear from Vance and what he's going to talk about today. Vance, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're going to talk about today?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. So, do I start with myself? Yeah, let's start with myself.
Yeah, do it.
I started Amazon FBA, so that was my first intro to e-commerce back in 2015. And back then, there was a lot of interesting things happening in the Amazon space. And one of them was that Amazon was starting to change their policies about what could qualify as a review. So before 2016, you could leave a review and say, "Hey, this is an honest, unbiased review," and that will allow you to leave a review on Amazon essentially and count towards the review of a product. And up until that point, that's how I launched products on Amazon. But there's this policy change near I think Q3 of 2016. And what that led to was that Amazon saying, nope, you can't do this anymore. And at that point, I had a massive order of this new product that I was manufacturing called the Arctic cold brew coffee maker that was being manufactured in China as this announcement hit Amazon. So this like shook everything up. And I started to panic because it was a massive order of lots of money. And I had no idea how I was going to move it because Amazon didn't allow for launches in that way anymore. So what I started doing was I started exploring different ways of launching on e-commerce. So I looked at Shopify. I looked at Kickstarter, which was a platform that I'd used to purchase products before, but never really saw it as a way to launch products. And looked into this and thought, hey, you know what? My product is pretty unique. Why don't I launch this on this platform? So I started exploring Kickstarter and launched my very first project on Kickstarter pre-orders, which we'll talk about what that means in a second. But essentially, my first product did $650,000 on Kickstarter, and I was blown away by the fact that you could launch products without actually having inventory. So this kind of changed the game for me. In my situation, I actually had inventory coming, but the idea behind Kickstarter was that really was appealing to me was that you could launch products without actually having an inventory at all and be able to build strong communities and brands. So that's what I really got into after Amazon. Launched my brand on Shopify and kind of from there started offering some services to help people launch pre-order campaigns with Kickstarter. And this is where I am today with two main brands. One is a brand that still sells on Amazon, and this coffee brand that focuses on selling interesting, unique specialty coffee products on Shopify.
I love it. That sounds so. Now I want some coffee. I'm ready for some coffee this morning. Well, awesome. Why don't you go ahead and take us through it? What's going on?
Cool. So today we're going to talk about essentially how to sell pre-orders before spending inventory. So as I've hinted at, so the idea here is if you've been in e-commerce and you've launched a product, you know that you'll of course have to invest in purchasing inventory before you launch. So I speak a lot to Amazon sellers and people that are on Shopify, and this is a common, of course we know how this works, but we don't know that there's an alternative to it, and that's what we're going to be talking about today: how to leverage pre-orders to be able to launch your products and eliminate your launch risk, your inventory launch risk, and also use this as a way to scale your products and your brand much more faster. Cool. So let's jump right into it. So pretty much gave you the intro already, but what I didn't tell you was the main reason why I started in e-commerce was I had a really cool trip in 2016 to Thailand, or 2015 to Thailand. And that became the time where I was really excited about how can I build a business that allows me to be location independent. And that's why I actually started e-commerce. So Amazon FBA in 2015. And from there, had a lot of failures, a lot of failed products. And eventually that's what led me to Kickstarter, which I mentioned. And since then, I've done about $7 million in successful launches. And two of my launches were actually the top number one in their niches and in the top 1% of Kickstarter projects of all time. So that's a little bit about my background, who I am. So the reality with e-commerce today is that launches are becoming a little bit more challenging, and not necessarily because of anything in particular, but we're just seeing a lot of people coming into the market, and it's making things a little bit more risky and a little bit more costly when it comes to launches. So lots of big players are coming in, and we're finding that there's for smaller players or people that just want to enter and launch products and not necessarily with a lot of funding or cash flow, it becomes really challenging to launch and scale products successfully. And on top of that, what that means is that if you're spending a lot of money on ads and you're really just trying to get into really just acquiring customers at the beginning, launches are becoming costly, but also your profit margins are decreasing. So the challenge here for us when we're coming in and launching products or launching brands is how can we really build a sustainable and diversified brand, and ideally on multiple channels. So these are the kind of the challenges that we're dealing with today when we're coming into e-commerce as entrepreneurs. And with these challenges, there's definitely opportunities for us to see how we can think out of the box to address them to be successful. So today we're going to talk about two main things, and we have two goals. So the first one is to understand why pre-orders, specifically with Kickstarter, is really the only way to launch that you can use to build your product and your brand without upfront inventory risk. So minimizing this idea of having to invest lots of capital into inventory in advance. And the second goal is to understand why the approach that we use, called the Launch Accelerator Blueprint, is really the only strategy that we can use to launch successfully while building a community of fans that's going to be supporting you as you launch your product and scale your brand. So I want to address a few FAQs right off the bat, because these are the questions I get the most when I talk about Kickstarter and pre-order launches. So number one, is Kickstarter another platform that replaces Amazon or Shopify? And the answer is no. Kickstarter is a launch platform, and what that means is it's going to be something that you use to launch your product, but that's not where you're going to keep your product in the long term. You're going to move your product to eventually Shopify, where you commercialize it, or Amazon if you choose to do that as well. So this is really kind of a additional part of your first step of your launch strategy. Number two, can you launch on Shopify and Amazon after? Just covered that. Yes. The great thing is everything that you prepare for Kickstarter is going to allow you to be ready for putting those photos, videos, copy, everything onto your product pages, and you'll be good to go and ready to launch. So this is not like you're doing extra work for Kickstarter. You're doing a lot of the stuff that you would normally need to do for a regular launch. And the final question that I get a lot is, do you need a 100% revolutionary product to launch, or does it work only for specific XYZ niche? And the answer is no. It works for lots of categories. We've seen this be very, very successful from food category all the way to kitchen and apparel, really just anything you can imagine. And Kickstarter used to be for really, really unique, revolutionary products, but nowadays people are just launching products that are small improvements on existing things, or just things that are not necessarily 100% unique in that way. So those are the three common questions that I get. So who does this work for? Really, regardless of the stage that you're at, whether you're beginning your e-commerce career and launching your first product, or if you have launched a lot of products before, if you're looking for a way to generate cash flow in a way that minimizes your launch risk, and you're really ready to build an audience and a community that can help you with scaling your brand in the long term, this is really going to be for you. But it really isn't for anybody who's looking for short-term profits, because at the end of the day, the effort that goes into a Kickstarter launch, we're going to talk about today, there's going to be an effort that's not just a simple launch that's where you hope that you can get a lot of quick profits without having to do a little bit of work behind the scenes. So if you're just kind of looking to launch quickly and this is a one-time shot, it's probably not going to be worth your focus to do this. So this is a great example of a brand that we worked with called Fly by Jing. And they're actually just a chili sauce. So a Szechuan Chinese chili sauce, and started by a female solo entrepreneur who is a chef. And essentially, she just had this idea that she wanted to launch this product, really didn't even know how she wanted to launch it, but she just had this idea. She came to us and said, hey, how can we approach this? What's the best way to do this? And we recommended that she looked at Kickstarter. And it's important to note that she had zero e-commerce experience at all. She was a chef. So what ended up happening was she ended up launching this Kickstarter campaign and raised about $120,000 for her launch. But that wasn't really the most important thing. She gained a lot of really crazy fans that were really into her brand. And what this ended up doing was this set the solid foundation for her brand to scale going forward. So as a part of the campaign, she received a lot of attention and a lot of PR from people that were just covering the food category. And from that, she was able to take this and essentially grow this brand like crazy afterwards. So she created a massive following on Instagram, over 100,000 followers from the last time we checked, and continued developing PR and a lot of excitement around her brand by creating a lot of cool content online. So what did that lead to? Well, she ended up really disrupting this industry. Chili sauce, if you've ever bought some, it's about $1, a couple dollars in the bottom shelf of the grocery store. This isn't a premium product in any way. Hers is selling for $15 to $17 a bottle. And she was already doing about 6 months after launch, already doing about 200K a month on Amazon alone. And her Shopify site had about over 100,000 visitors a month. So this is crazy for this type of brand to be able to develop this type of momentum. And the most interesting thing is because of this launch she had on Kickstarter, she was able to get some external funding from strategic investors, which allowed her to get into really interesting retail channels like Costco, Target, and the most difficult one, which was Whole Foods. So very cool to see someone leveraging this type of launch to be able to not only do well in e-commerce, but outside of e-commerce as well, to create different channels for her to have diversified income. So today we're going to talk about those two goals that we talked about earlier. And so we're going to go through each of those in individual sections. And if any questions, we can address them all the way at the end. So at the end, we'll have a bit of a bonus for you, and also we'll do the Q&A with Ilana. So part one, let's talk about how Kickstarter pre-orders work and how this is going to forever change the way you look at launches. So first of all, it's important for us to talk about what is Kickstarter and what is crowdfunding. So I'm going to use these terms interchangeably, but going forward, I'm just going to say Kickstarter for simplicity. But crowdfunding is this idea of essentially outside of e-commerce, it was this model that allowed many people to chip in to bring something to life, whether it's a big project or an invention. Within e-commerce, crowdfunding was a way that became popular in the early 2000s that allowed people to essentially put some money down to support launching a product that didn't exist yet. So the idea was that if you put down this money and you supported this product, you would back the product and you would be the first to get it when it's manufactured. So for us as entrepreneurs, this is a way that we use to launch products as a part of our strategy. And it's a way to get initial funding. So if you don't have the initial funding to launch your product, this is a great way to get funding. If you do have funding already, this is a good way to get cash flow up front. So it becomes a way where you can kind of get ahead of a cash flow cycle rather than having to order inventory first. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's also an amazing way to build an audience that's going to be excited about your product and your brand. So there's two main crowdfunding platforms, Kickstarter, which is the original and most popular one, and Indiegogo, which is another crowdfunding platform that's really popular as well. So these are the two main platforms. And what's special about these e-commerce shoppers on these crowdfunding platforms? Well, these are really, really interesting users because these are really wealthy customers. These are people, when you think about it, are willing to pay for a product that doesn't exist yet, that they may never get, because it's always a risk that if you support a project that you might not get it. So they might be paying $50, $100, sometimes even over $1,000 for products that they really are excited about, but don't know if for sure this is going to come to life. So definitely really, really wealthy shoppers. People that are early adopters that are interested in trying new things or interested in supporting new products and brands. And also these are people that really are excited and passionate about sharing once they support a project because it makes them feel good. They want to feel like they're involved in something at an early stage. These are some properties of why these customers are very special. And on average, we notice that a lot of these customers, if you look at their profiles, they back some of them are backing 20, 30 projects in their lifetime, but a lot of them at least back, between 5 and 10 projects. So these people are there looking for these interesting projects and brands to support. And that gives us opportunities to reach out to these people and connect with them in a way that gets them excited. So why is this favorable for us as entrepreneurs and sellers? I wrote Amazon here because I talked to a lot of Amazon sellers, but this applies essentially to the traditional model where we have to order inventory first before we start selling. So this applies, of course, to Shopify, retail, any situation where you're purchasing inventory first. So the way that the traditional model works that you're obviously very familiar with is that you order first, you pay for the inventory before you receive any customer orders. You have this in stock and you're ready to ship. And then whatever it takes to launch, whether you're running ads or you're running campaigns with influencers, whatever it is that you're going to use to launch this. And then you're hoping that you start making sales. If you're in Amazon, you're hoping that you rank. If you're on Shopify, you're hoping that your ads start converting and that you figure out the right combination of ads and creatives that actually allow you to be successful. So this is what we do traditionally when it comes to e-commerce launches. So how does the Kickstarter pre-order model differ? Well, this is going to be really interesting because what we do with Kickstarter is that instead of having the inventory first, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to launch a limited time campaign of up to 60 days. So this is the maximum amount of time that it's going to be a live campaign is 60 days. We get our customers to order and place pre-orders in advance, and we get paid by Kickstarter when the campaign ends 15 days afterwards. So we get the money first, then we place the order with our manufacturers, and at that point, we get to fulfill to our customers. So after this, as I mentioned earlier, you get to launch on whatever channel of your choice after. So this is just the initial launch strategy. So if you put them side by side, you get to see how this is really going to be very different for you as an entrepreneur, as a seller. You notice the main thing to notice is that the stage where you place the manufacturing order. So with the traditional model, you're placing it right away. With the Kickstarter launch model or the pre-order launch model, you wait to get the money first, then you place it. So we're going to talk about what the benefits are, but you can kind of start to see where this is going to impact your business in a very, very unique way. So what do you need in order to launch? Well, number one, you need a prototype, and you need a working prototype. So if you have a product, let's say, well, in this situation, it's a towel that I have on screen here. This towel raised about 300, it's crazy, but this towel raised over $300,000. They had a working towel. If you have like a, I don't know, like a glass, or like if you had you had like a piece of clothing or something like this, you need to have a working prototype that you can show that it's functioning, it exists in real life. So that's what you need in order to launch. And the second thing that you need in order to launch is this campaign page. So that's equivalent to your Shopify product page, where you have your photo, video, copy, whatever you include to show off how your product works. And so those are all the thing to note is that those are all assets that you need for a normal launch. So if you're launching on a Shopify website, you'll definitely need to have this anyways to launch your product. So you're not doing a lot of extra work for Kickstarter. The only thing that some people would argue is say, well, yeah, if I'm launching on Shopify, I don't need necessarily video. But a lot of brands now are investing in video to use this as brand, marketing assets, video ads, and that type of thing. So I would argue that nowadays, to be competitive, having a nice video or video assets is really going to help you out a lot. So these are all things that I would argue are things that you need for any type of launch anyways. So what you don't need is where we're going to have a lot of advantages when we talk about the benefits, is that you don't need inventory in stock. You will be delivering it after you receive the order from your manufacturer, and you set the time frame in which you want that to be delivered. So that becomes a massive advantage for people that don't have the cash flow up front or want to get ahead of a cash flow cycle for inventory ordering, which we will talk about. So why is this a better launch strategy? There's lots of reasons, but I've captured the top 5 reasons of from people that have worked with us, from our members, from our clients. They say that these are the best. These are the top 5 reasons why they love the pre-order launch strategy. So we're going to go through them one by one. So the first one is how this allows us to flip the model and eliminate risk. So we hinted at this already. Instead of having to order inventory up front and risk that, who knows what's going to happen? Are we going to be able to move it? Is it going to be stuck in stock for a long time? What happens if the demand isn't there after we launch? All those types of challenges are addressed by having the orders come in first before actually selling the inventory. So with our approach, what we really like to do is we're able to focus on launching, but we do this without a prototype. We make sure that launch is going to be appealing to the audience, but we do this without a prototype. And that means we're able to do this before spending a single dollar on inventory. So this is a really strong way to mitigate risk and be able to have a launch without having all this inventory that you've invested money into in advance. Number 2 is to be profitable and cash flow positive at launch. So launches are generally not profitable. We invest a lot of money into doing different things that allow the launch to start ramping up. We might be testing ads. We might be paying a lot of money out to influencers, and we're experimenting with different channels that actually work. So often we see the launch as a a bit of a sunk cost. So, and we're hoping that at some point, if we start doing well, our ads start performing, we're going to start being able to recoup some of the costs from the initial launch to be able to get that to get into action. And of course, this is a very cash flow poor model because we're investing not only in the inventory, but we're doing what it takes to invest in the initial launch of a product. So there's going to be a lot of challenges when it comes to cash flow with this. With the approach that we take when it comes to launching on Kickstarter, generally, if we are seeing a successful campaign, we are profitable right away, because what happens is we're collecting the money, we're getting this upfront, and we're getting the cash flow, and we're generally the money that we're investing into the campaign, we're seeing results right away. So if we're not seeing results, we can obviously slow down spending. But if we're seeing results, we pump a lot of money because we're getting positive ROI. So right now what we're expecting is at the end of the campaign, we are definitely cash flow positive. And if we've decided that our objective is that we are going to have a positive ROAS, then we're pushing for profitability for the launch of the campaign. So a very, very different scenario than if we were to invest in $50,000 of inventory first and then hope that somehow after investing in the launch that we're going to be profitable. And usually that doesn't happen for often several cycles. So depends on, of course, the cost of your product and all these other factors. But generally, we're not. One of the biggest challenges of successful e-commerce sellers is that cash flow becomes more and more challenging as you sell more and more. So this isn't a problem that really goes away once you become more successful. And actually, as you start selling more and more and scaling more and more, this becomes a bigger problem. So the idea here is we're really looking at ways where we can get ahead of cash flow and flip the model so that we are not having this crunch in terms of having available cash to reinvest into the business. And so those are the summary of the two financial related benefits. The next one is a little bit more geared towards Amazon, but the idea here is we are able to, through this launch strategy, build a list of really excited fans. But at the end of the day, what we're looking to do is we're looking to build a community. So the idea here is that if we're doing traditional launches that are people just transactionally interacting with our product, they don't necessarily feel like they're connected to the story of our brand and the product launches. And so Kickstarter has this unique element of people wanting to support the product specifically because they feel like they're connected to the story of the founder launching the product. So what that means is that they become invested in you and invested in what you're working on, so that these people are much more likely to be real fans of what you're doing because of the process that they went through purchasing your Kickstarter product. And one example that we had with one of my products was launching on my first campaign with Kickstarter and Indiegogo. My first product that I mentioned earlier, the cold brew coffee maker, the Arctic, was a really cool product. It did very well. It did almost $1 million between Kickstarter and Indiegogo and upsells. And what ended up happening was launching our second product. These customers, well, first of all, these customers actually gave us the idea for this product. They said they wanted a cool functioning glass that could do something interesting with coffee, not just drink it, but it'd be cool if there's a way that this could enhance the coffee experience in some way. So these customers actually, when we did surveys, they gave us the idea to start exploring the next product that we launched to this exact audience. So we launched our second product to this audience, this coffee audience, which was we called it the Vance glasses. And so they're essentially glasses that were designed after the principles of wine and whiskey glasses that allows you to kind of enhance the smell and the taste of wine. Sounds like it doesn't work, but it's actually a real thing. And it's tested with lots of really crazy, nerdy coffee people. So, and so when we launched the second campaign, this was to the exact audience that supported us the first time when we launched the Arctic. And we had about 5% of customers come back to support our second campaign. Well, you might think, okay, well, 5%, that's not a very big number. That doesn't sound very significant. Well, 5% actually, when we put together the numbers, ended up to be about almost $40,000 worth of sales upon launch. So imagining having a community of people or a group of fans that really love your products and line up to kind of support you when you launch your next products or your new accessories or whatever it is that you're adding to your product line, rather than having to expend a lot of money to essentially acquire new customers, you have customers that are ready to support you right away. So this is one of the massive benefits of being able to incorporate people into feeling invested in your brand. And this is one of the main benefits of what Kickstarter allows us to accomplish. This one I won't spend too much time on, but number 4 is establish product and brand credibility. Often, whether you're successful on Shopify or on Amazon, there's not a lot of public social proof unless people start deciding to write about you or you start generating press yourself. With Kickstarter launch campaigns, there's a lot of really strong excitement that builds up around successful campaigns. So if you have a product that is appealing to a certain niche, in my case, the coffee niche, people see this project, they want to start writing about it. So this is a great way for you to start getting free PR and opportunities for you to get featured in publications that allow you to grow the reach of your brand and also to have credibility when people start searching you. So really, really awesome side benefit of being able to launch through this type of approach. And the final one is the launch strategy allows you to have new opportunities for diversifying your brand and scaling your business in different ways. So with Shopify and Amazon, if you're getting successful on that platform, you're going to be successful on that platform. But with our approach of launching on Kickstarter, you end up having some interesting ways that allow you to expand and grow your revenue channels. So when we get a lot of press, when we have people reaching out to us because they like our product, we're able to use these opportunities as ways to establish new e-commerce channels. So if we're selling on Shopify, that might not necessarily be enough, and we want to start expanding to different channels. We might find third-party channels that want to carry our product because they are maybe a specialty giftware store or like a kitchenware store, and they want to start carrying coffee products. So that's a very real situation that's really happened to us that allowed us to start selling on these third-party sites. And this has also opened up opportunities for us and a lot of our clients that we've worked with to retail, which is something that most people don't really necessarily think about getting involved with if they're moving into e-commerce. Retail opportunities start popping up. And right now we have about 15 countries carrying our products that are distributors buying our products and selling it to cafes or giftware stores or department stores. And all of these leads came from us having a successful campaign and them finding out about the campaign and wanting to reach out to us to carry our products. So this becomes a bit of a calling card for you to be able to have people reach out to you and say, hey, what do you think about us carrying your product in Dubai or in Japan or something like this? And this really allows you to have different opportunities that you might open up to that you don't really think about when you're just launching a Shopify store or just selling on a platform like Amazon. So those are the ways that those are the top 5 ways that people have found this to be a better launch strategy. And again, this isn't something that replaces any other launch strategy. This is just the way that allows us to launch better and then move that onto the channels that we already know about. So let's talk a little bit about how to execute this and what this looks like to actually execute a launch. So we're going to go through what I call our launch accelerator blueprint process. And so this is the strategy that we use to launch our products. And there's a lot of unique elements in here that would be applicable to launching on a crowdfunding if you're interested in this type of launch for yourself. So this is an opportunity to kind of learn what that looks like. So a little bit of background. I started with Amazon, like I mentioned earlier, and I did really well with my first product. And I had this really ambitious goal of launching 12 products the next year. I knew nothing about cash flow at that point in time. I just was really excited about, hey, let's make something happen. Borrowed money, used a lot of my savings, and essentially, spoiler alert, is I really had a massive, essentially a big loss that second year because there was no reliable way for me to be cash flow positive. I kept trying to catch up on cash flow for my inventory orders. And I wasn't building, specifically on Amazon, I wasn't really building a brand there. And it wasn't something that people recognized and really, really cared about supporting in the long term. So in that second year, 2016, I launched over $150,000, mostly in inventory. And so out of that 12 products that I did launch, 10 products failed and only 2 of those survived. So along the way, that's what ended up allowing me to discover Kickstarter and develop this process through my own launches in this process. So that's what we're going to be talking about right now. So there's 6 main steps that we focus on. And I'm going to walk through them individually, and we're going to dive into what it looks like for the important elements of those steps. So step 1 is to be able to determine your USP. So one important element of being successful on Kickstarter is that you need some type of unique element that allows you to stand out. So it's just to be able to have some type of hook that allows you to connect with the audience. It doesn't mean that you need to necessarily create something completely brand new or reinvent the wheel. And it doesn't necessarily need to be that the product has never been done before. It just needs to have some type of unique angle or positioning. So here's an example that I have here of this cocktail shaker, something that you see very, very often on really anywhere, department stores, Amazon, you name it. This one really did a good job at branding themselves as this high-end elevated cocktail shaker. And these guys did $470,000 when they launched on Kickstarter. Works for all niches. We've talked about this before. This is the framework that we use to determine a USP that's going to stand out. So we call this the edges framework. And essentially, there's 3 levels of let's call them difficulties. And there's 4 edges within these 3 levels. So I'm going to walk through each of them individually and explain how we can make use of edges to create a USP that's going to stand out or create multiple USPs that stand out. So edge 1 is essentially product positioning. So product positioning is simply finding a different way to present the product concept or idea. So this can be done through emphasizing either the feature or the benefit in a new or different way, or it's you can be presenting or positioning the same product to a different audience, and that becomes an interesting way to get excitement about the product. So this is an example of a packing cube that did really well on Kickstarter. So this is if you've seen these types of products, they're kind of just like flimsy little bags that you put clothing in. This packing cube had 2 sides. And this is not a unique thing necessarily. There's packing cubes that just have multiple openings. These guys had 2 sides, and what they did was they positioned this as a packing cube that allowed you to store your clean clothes on one side and the dirty clothes on the other side. So very cool positioning. And they also emphasize the fact that you can save maybe like 60% space or something in your packing luggage. It's not that a lot of other packing cubes didn't do this. These guys just chose to emphasize this and position it in a unique way that made people really excited about this product. So these guys did about 280,000 on their Kickstarter launch for a product that was pretty standard if you've kind of browsed this category within e-commerce or Amazon. Another example that I have here, I love this example. This is definitely not a new product. They're blackout curtains, and blackout curtains have existed for who knows how many years. But these guys took the blackout curtain and they made it portable by adding, I think, just some suction cups or something to it so that they can disconnect it and add it. And so positioning it as a portable blackout curtain got people really excited because a lot of people wanted to move their blackout curtains rather than just leave it in one place. And so these guys raised almost $300,000 by having this interesting positioning of having blackout curtains being movable. So this example is called Aftersocks. And this is a really cool one because these guys essentially just positioned an existing product to a new audience. And so Aftersocks, these were the original no-shoe hiking socks that were marketed towards being able to hike outdoors in a way that you're walking naturally. But these guys, what they did was they marketed this towards women as socks that you can wear after going out, so that you don't have to walk with your heels, or you don't have to be uncomfortable after you're going out. So these guys did almost, they did over 90,000 euros for this launch, which was a really cool example of strong product positioning. And one more example, this is my favorite one. This is called the Zen Egg. Essentially, this is a desk toy, a wooden desk toy that looks like an egg. But what these guys did was they positioned this as a meditation tool. But so when you have this egg on your table, it's a reminder that you can hold on to it, and it's like you can meditate with it. And these guys raised over $110,000 on their Kickstarter launch. Really, really cool example of good product positioning. So that's level 1. And we say level 1 because this is something that you can do with most products to find an interesting way to position it. Level 2 is medium level difficulty. What that means is you're going to be doing some type of modification to the product. So we have Edge 2 and Edge 3 here. Edge 2 is essentially making a small change to the product that does not affect the function of the product. So there's 2 ways to do this. One is materials. So this is an amazing example of a product that has existed for thousands of years. Chopsticks have been around forever, but they were made out of wood. So these guys took chopsticks and made it out of titanium. And whatever aerospace grade titanium means, they did that and people loved it. Over $270,000 raised with their launch of aerospace grade titanium chopsticks. So another example is aesthetic design. So these guys are one of our clients. They're called Pangea, and they created a eco bamboo towel. So these are microfiber travel towels. They're really popular. They took the same concept. They turned the material into eco bamboo material, and they made the packaging look really nice so that you can kind of put it into the sleeve and you can kind of carry it with you in your backpack. So this is a combination of changing the material and also making the appearance look a little bit nicer. And these guys did over 200,000 with their this is their second launch on Kickstarter. Another example is packing cubes. You can tell I like traveling. These guys launched a travel packing cube set of 7 packing cubes that included a bunch of different sizes and packing cubes that did different things for your shoes and for your toiletries. This is an example of what we call Edge 3, which is a small functional upgrade. So you're doing something that changes the perception of how it's being used. And in doing this, this is really exciting for because it might be something that they've never thought about, or it might be something that's interesting that actually is unique either in a bundle or some way that the product can be used slightly differently than people intended it to be. So these guys did over $280,000 with their launch. And they also improved the materials and the way that it looks as well. So you can see how you can combine some of these edges to make your products more appealing and find a way to kind of make what you're looking to launch stand out. One more example. This was a folio case. So essentially something you use to carry your papers. They called it the Visionary Portfolio. And what they did was they combined an Edge 1 element, which is positioning this to entrepreneurs and people that resonated with being, some type of visionary or entrepreneur or business person. And they made it look a little sexier. They made the material out of leather. And that's it. Something as simple as a folio case did over $70,000 on Kickstarter. And Edge 4, so this is in the category of level 3. So we call this the harder category because you're actually creating something that's going to be used differently. So this one, I mean, not everybody's going to fall into this category, but if you're ambitious or you have a really cool invention idea, this is where your product would fall. So the idea here is you're actually modifying a product, or you're creating a product that's different, that's going to be reimagining the way that people use the product in this category. So this is a cool example of a collapsible cutlery set where you can kind of disconnect the pieces and take forks, knives, and spoons with you on the go, and it fits into your pocket. So really cool. Raised over €1 million. Cool, really cool campaign. And this is one of my favorites because I'm a little bit of a plant nerd when I'm not traveling. This was a planter that allows you to plant on the outside. So if you have cool invention ideas for something like this, there's a massive market for stuff like this on Kickstarter. These guys essentially created a planter where you can plant and the plant will grow outside of this planter. And it had this really interesting technology to it that was really not crazy revolutionary, but they just thought of it in a cool way and it presented in a really awesome way. Some people bought like a dozen of these on their first go, and they were like really expensive. So $6 million raised on a cool product invention idea, essentially. So this is a really cool example of an Edge 4 where you're creating something that's going to be a unique functional use of a product. So that's USP. And I spent a lot of time on this because that's one of the key elements that need to be nailed for us to understand how our product is going to be standing out. So if we have that, then we can move on to some of our the next steps. So next step is creating your campaign page, which I hinted at earlier. So with your campaign page, this is going to be equivalent to your Shopify product page. And essentially, you'll need 3 main category of assets: photos, copy, and specifically a campaign video. So these are generally assets that you need for your launch anyways, like I mentioned earlier. But of course, we really recommend that when you're launching on Kickstarter, that you invest in high quality assets. So this isn't something that your cousin is going to take photos of, or your girlfriend's brother or something like this. You really want to be able to invest in high quality assets that's going to represent the product, because this is what people get excited for when they see really, really cool creative assets and nice photos and a nice video. This is what's going to make them buy. And of course, when you invest in high quality assets, this is going to be available for your brand later on as well. So you're going to put this on your Shopify page, your Shopify product page. You're going to use this for ads. You're going to use this in your emails, wherever it is that you're going to be able to present your product and your brand well. this is going to be a long-term investment in your brand. So we highly recommend investing in these assets to make sure that your campaign page is going to be presentable. And at the same time, this is going to be an investment in the long term of your product and brand. And when creating your campaign, there's two main things that you have to consider. Number one is your funding goal. And your funding goal is the amount that you are targeting to raise. Specifically within Kickstarter, you want to set this to be under $30,000. So you want to be able to hit this within the first 24 to 48 hours. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the algorithm in a second, but we want to generally keep it between $10,000 and $30,000 so that you can hit this within your first 24 to 48 hours. And the campaign duration is how long the campaign runs for, with a maximum of 60 days. Generally, we recommend between 30 to 45 days, and that's going to be the sweet spot for a campaign to have momentum and not be boring, and you're not going to exhaust the audiences with that type of time frame. Building your audience. So if you're coming in a situation where you have a bit of an audience already, this is going to be great because you get to build on top of this and you already have a bit of a head start. But if you're starting from scratch, I won't go into this. I'm sure there's a lot of people that talk about why it's important to build an audience, but really the main benefit here for the context of the launch is that these are going to be the people that are supporting you. But for the context of growing your brand in the future, these are going to be the people that are excited to support your product, your future product launches, and your brand as you go forward. So this is not only just for the purpose of the launch. We identify two main categories of people that we want to build within our list and our community. The first one is what we call ideal future customers. So these are people that are going to be purchasing our product when we launch the campaign. So the main thing that we want to ask ourselves is, where do these people hang out online? So are they hanging out in certain types of Facebook groups? Maybe they're in some Reddit communities. Maybe they're even in a live context where there's local meetups. If you're selling, for example, like athletic wear or tennis gear or something like this, you might have local runners groups or a local tennis meetup. Those are really, really awesome ways to start accessing your audience, because what we want to do is we want to start connecting with our audience in advance to not only connect with them to get feedback about what we're looking to launch, but at the same time, these are going to be people, once we form relationships with them, that they're going to be excited about following through with purchasing once we launch. So influence or IFCs, ideal future customers, that's what we really want to focus on at this early stage of building a community in your list. The second category that we focus on is relevant for a lot of product launches nowadays and a lot of product categories, is having influencers. So we focus on influencers for two main reasons. The first one is to be able to have credibility for our product. And the second one is to add potential traffic source to our launch. So we have a bunch of different categories. Won't go through them all here, but they're not just the typical influencers that are on Instagram. We have other categories like industry experts or community administrators who have access to big audiences that will allow us to start kind of considering all of the different possibilities of influencers that can help us either have credibility to our launch or drive traffic to the launch. And of course, the most important thing when it comes to influencers is not the number of followers, but how relevant their audience is to your product category or your niche. So that's going to be really important to make sure we consider. Number 4, launch strong. I mentioned, I hinted at this earlier, that we want to make sure that we are hitting our campaign goal within the first 24 to 48 hours. And the reason why we want to do this is that it allows us to kind of jumpstart the Kickstarter algorithm to start paying attention to our project. And once we do this, we start getting some organic lift within Kickstarter and potentially social media blasts, email blasts, ranking within the Kickstarter platform, featuring in different areas of the Kickstarter website. And this allows us to really start ramping up our funding within the Kickstarter platform. So with my product launch, the Vance Lee glasses that I mentioned earlier, our funding goal was $20,000, and we hit that within the first hour because we had an existing list of customers that were really excited to support us. This is an ideal situation if you, it's optional, but we highly recommend that you try to take advantage of PR during your campaign, because this is a really great way to start getting your name and your brand out there. And if you have an interesting product, you're definitely going to want to do this, because this is how a lot of people discover new products, is through these interesting blog sites or these sites that talk about inventions, or a niche specific site that talk about, for example, in our situation, coffee. We're going to get a lot of people that are interested in our niche find out about us through these types of PR publications. And often, if you have a cool product, you're not paying for this. A lot of situations where we see our members and our clients get PR, it's strictly from the fact that people from these websites or these blogs or these interesting kind of content sites are just picking up things that they want to write about. So you're not really paying anything for it. It's a really interesting way to get PR for your product and your brand. And finally, being able to make use of your community to start getting them to help you promote. Because once people are your customers, they bought your product, they're excited about it. So this is a great opportunity for you to and get them excited and get them participating in sharing the product with their friends, sharing it on social media. And this is also a great way to give your campaign some lift. Step 5, fulfill the order. So once the campaign is over, you get your money within 15 days. And that's when you're going to start placing your order with your supplier, your manufacturer. There's a bonus. I won't go into too much detail with this now, but you can actually move your campaign over from Kickstarter to Indiegogo and to continue selling pre-orders. And in our situation, we sold about another 90,000 on Indiegogo for our coffee cups. And of course, at the end of the day, you want to make sure that because these are your customers now, that you're going to fulfill on your promise and make sure that you're going to use this as an opportunity to develop a strong relationship of trust with your customers that have supported you through this campaign. And finally, the campaign is not over. I've hinted at this many times as we've gone through this process. The campaign is just a way to launch. What we're going to want to do with the campaign is use this as a way to establish our brand. So one of the most important ways to do this is we want to start getting our customers involved in creating user-generated content, to start sharing things like unboxing videos, sharing stuff on social media. And this becomes the way that we actually start building credibility with our brand in a way that is taking advantage of the fact that customers are excited about receiving our product and want to share about it. So perfect opportunity to start building momentum for our brand. And this is a great way to get them involved, but at the same time, have a lot of benefits, because with this type of content, you get to turn this content into ads. You get to turn this content into social media posts, whatever it is that you want to do with it. It's an awesome opportunity for you to take advantage of the launch to start establishing these, this way of generated content, so that you can use this for when you start scaling on your channel of choice on Shopify or on Amazon. And so that's the lab approach. And I'm going to quickly walk through a few case studies of campaigns that we've really liked, or brands that we really liked. Peak Design is one of the biggest examples of successful brands that have built an entire following strictly from launching on Kickstarter. These guys launched 10 campaigns that raised over $33 million. This literally started with one guy in his basement, a little bit of a nerdy camera guy who designed a little bit of a system where you can clip your camera to this clip and mount it on your strap. And essentially, he launched that, got a bunch of people excited, and then kept launching products over the next 7 years. 2 products. He launched on average 1 or 2 products every year. His projects became bigger and bigger until they became 7-figure campaigns, launching camera bags, and eventually travel gear and more accessories, all 7-figure campaigns. And then finally, he launched a 8-figure campaign for a tripod. And these were products that were historically only manufactured by some of the biggest companies, the camera gear companies in the world. This guy built a massive entire company based on launching and building his audience from Kickstarter. He sells everywhere. Really, he has global distribution in every single camera store that are specialty camera stores. And this guy is pretty much an independent player that is now competing with the biggest camera companies in the world. In 2019, he reported about $60-70 million in revenue. So crazy. One of the biggest success stories, of course, in Kickstarter, but we're not necessarily expecting all to be at that level, but it's just to show the possibility of continuing to sell and grow your audience through interesting channels like this. Another smaller example is a company called Better Back. These guys make posture devices where you can support your back to keep it straight, or a backpack that kind of keeps your back straight as well. 3 campaigns, almost $3 million raised, and lots of fans gained. They ended up using this publicity to go to Shark Tank in the US, and ended up getting a deal with somebody on Shark Tank. Her name was Barbara. And I'm not sure what happened with the deal afterwards, but they essentially said, hey, we haven't launched yet, and we got this many pre-orders. Interested in doing a deal? So essentially, he leveraged this way as a unique way to get involved in funding. And we've seen a lot of people do this as well, getting funding from the pre-order launch results. And so that's a really good example of a smaller campaign. This is also another example of a company that's in the health and beauty space, organic skincare, really, really crowded niche. But these guys launched a small campaign. So this is a really good example of a campaign. I don't want you to think that you have to launch $1 million campaigns for this to be, effective for you. These guys launched a campaign that raised about $40,000. About 800 people bought the product at this point in time. And they ended up taking this and became really successful on Amazon, selling on their own Shopify website and online third-party retailers. So these guys, last time we spoke to them, they had a team of 25 people. They started with just two founders bootstrapping it, and they were doing $300,000 a month on Amazon and $300,000 a month off Amazon on Shopify and third-party retail sites. So really cool examples of companies leveraging the pre-order launch process using Kickstarter to build strong brands. So yeah, I think that's it. Would you be okay if we went into kind of the bonuses that I have for
Yeah,
your
please
audience,
share
and
with those.
also
Yeah. And then we
in
can
the
go into some
Q&A?
questions because I know I have some
Awesome, cool. So bonuses, because you were patient, you made it this far. We are going to share with you our what we call our launch hacker blueprint and guide. So essentially, this is a free resource that allows you to understand kind of the basics of what it takes to launch on a crowdfunding website like Kickstarter and to execute a pre-order launch. So 100% free. And this is going to give you the foundational understanding of what's involved in this type of launch, because I know it's going to be a little bit different than the traditional launches that you're familiar with. So this is going to be the guide that gets you to that point. So the link that you're going to use to get to this is essentially livemyplayground.com. So LIVEMY playground.com /Ilana. And that's going to get you to our resources.
Wonderful. And I'll share that link too in the notes. So those that that need to click on it directly, that's how you're going to get it, is in the show notes.
Perfect.
Awesome.
So yeah, why don't we do some Q&A?
Yeah. So tell me, is there a difference between pre-orders and crowdfunding, and what does that look like?
Well, I mean, crowdfunding, if we're talking in the context of e-commerce, essentially they're kind of the same thing. So when you're crowdfunding a project or you're supporting it, you're essentially just placing a pre-order for the product. So it didn't used to be the case. It used to be that you can actually crowdfund something that you don't get the product for. Maybe you're investing in a project or you're investing in like a business or something like that. And then there's lots of small investors, so that could be called crowdfunding. But in the commerce, in the context of e-commerce, they're pretty much the same thing. So you're crowdfunding a project, but you're actually your incentive or your reward for crowdfunding that project is the pre-order product that you're getting. So you're paying for the product essentially through a pre-order.
Okay, thanks. That's kind of what I figured as well, but because I've seen a lot of people, even through my app with Jason LD for SEO, I see people do pre-orders on Shopify. Because that we talk about it through the context of structured data because they need it to be able to sell on Merchant Center for pre-orders. So that's why I was kind of asking the question. And then you've also mentioned Quickstarter quite a bit throughout this whole talk, which makes sense. But there are crowdfunding and pre-order apps available on Shopify, for example. So is there a reason why you would say go with Quickstarter over the crowdfunding style apps or the pre-order apps that are on Shopify?
Yeah, great question. So those apps can work perfectly fine if you are wanting to launch to your existing audience. What the benefit is from going on Kickstarter, it allows you to, once you start building momentum of your campaign, to access the Kickstarter audience. So these are the specific people in that audience that are looking to support new projects. They're generally the wealthier individuals that we talked about that want to support interesting ideas, and they want to find out about new brands. So definitely, if you are interested in kind of going at the scale of launching to your own audience and your own email list or something like that, you can definitely use one of these apps on Shopify, and that allows you to launch to your audience and get them involved in that way. But if you're looking to kind of expand and grow your audience and potentially access a new audience that would be interested in your product category and your niche, Kickstarter is a really good option because you're finding people that want to do this. They're looking for projects like this, and they're excited to support new brands and new projects that are launching through these creators that are bringing these projects to Kickstarter. So that's a different way for you to access new audiences.
And I love the examples that you gave too during your talk about um, the validation process and how like when you are selling one product, people can actually kind of give ideas for other products or tell you that like, hey, the one that you're launching is not going to work, sort of thing, just by not supporting it. So do you have any like recommendations for folks as they're going through this process of launching a new product to say, you know what, maybe this product isn't viable? Like at what point do they decide it's no longer a viable product? It's like I
Yeah,
should stop.
that's a great question. And I think most people get this feedback after they launch. I think
Yeah.
that's a really bad time to get that feedback because you've already invested a lot of energy and effort into it. Our approach that we use with the lab is that we make sure that we get this feedback way in advance. So regardless of the stage of your product development, so whether it's like in the ideation phase or the concept phase, or you're in the sketching phase or the prototyping phase or samples, whatever it might be, wherever you're starting, um, as quickly as possible, you should be getting feedback from your actual target audience. So in our process of building community and building an audience, we actually use this as a way to interact with the audience as an excuse to get in touch with them. So if you have a mailing list, perfect. You start with your mailing list and kind of reaching out to your existing audience to ask for feedback. And a lot of people are afraid to do this because they feel like, oh, well, it's not perfect yet. It's not ready. Well, that's kind of actually the point because when your product isn't ready and it's not perfectly done, this is the perfect opportunity for you to get feedback. And it actually shows that you're kind of a real person, you know, like you're offering something out there that isn't done in a way that's very genuine. And people really feel that they feel that and they feel like they want to be participating in something like that when the founder of a company or somebody who's an entrepreneur asks them for an idea or asks them for their feedback, people love that kind of stuff, right? So it's a new opportunity for them to engage with you and give you feedback that's actually going to be helpful for your product. But at the same time, this interaction is going to allow them to be more invested in your brand and your product and who you are. So this is how you really build an audience of fans. So I guess to answer your question, the sooner the better. Regardless of the stage that you're at, the sooner the better. So we have people coming into our program, interested in our program. Some of them are early ideation phase. We say yes, regardless of where you're at with that. Start getting feedback. And we have people that have completed products that come into our program. And one example of this was we had a member come into our program. He had this idea for Funko Pops, you know, those collectible action figure type of things. He had an idea how he wanted to enhance the Funko Pops by putting certain stickers on them. And he was so excited about this idea. He patented this idea. He was ready to go. And he started building his community with massive influencers in this like Funko Pop collectible space. And he got feedback from most people overwhelmingly that said like, hey, this is like, we don't really want this. Like, this is not really appealing to us, right? And it really kind of, I mean, it's like double double-edged sword. It was really like bad news and good news at the same time. Bad news because he invested a lot of effort and energy into this product, and he's getting really not positive feedback from the community about it. Good news is that he was ready to launch this and invest lots of money into the marketing elements of it and build out the campaign video and all this other stuff that he would invest like potentially thousands or tens of thousands of dollars into. And he got this feedback early. So he ended up cutting the product. Like he just said, hey, I'm not going to launch this product. It's not clearly not good enough. And he actually got feedback from his community about the next product that he should launch. And he ended up launching a collectibles case, like for cards and collectible cards. And it did really well. He did 190K launch with his product. And he would have done way worse with this other product that he was so excited about. Because as a founder, sometimes you don't you get too excited, so you get blinded by your own enthusiasm. And getting real feedback from real customers is really key. And the key is real customers, not like your friends and family. Those people are going to give you good feedback, and you really want like real feedback from target audience customers, and that's the key.
I love that too. It makes me think about the whole idea that we think that this product's going to be good and everyone's going to want to buy it because I want to buy it. But it's like you also have to think about is there an audience that will pay for it? Like the idea is cool, maybe it's cool, but if people won't pay for it, then it's not a viable product.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, one of the things that I you for those who aren't seeing the presentation, there was a graph when we were talking about launching via Kickstarter regarding the cash flow. And you start out seeing a negative cash flow when you're doing the prototype, I'm assuming, and then you see positive cash flow at launch. And then there's a dip in the cash flow again before a positive. Is the dip again the fulfillment stage? Is that why you see a dip at some point in the launch through Kickstarter, or is there another reason why people might see a dip?
Oh, well, you have to order the inventory.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, so it goes down because you're investing in kind of the prototyping and whatever it is to get the product ready. You make the money from the campaign, assuming you're that's your strategy. If your strategy is to be positive in the campaign, then you're going to be profitable in the campaign, and then you have to place the order with the funds that you get. So that's going to essentially you spending the money to get inventory to start fulfilling to your customers.
Got it. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure because I saw it and I just wanted to make sure. Because for me, I was like, oh, well, there's a big dip. What's that about? And then I had to think about it. And so I just wanted to ask.
Yeah, some people actually execute these campaigns with the goal of not necessarily being profitable, and they have a different objective, like brand awareness, customer acquisitions. So if they can acquire customers at break even, they want to do that because it's you're getting the product out there. A lot of people are trying it. You're getting new customers at zero cost. And you're building this brand and you're building momentum and user generated content. So there's a very valid strategy that's not about profiting when it comes to the launch, but you can actually break even or even pay an acquisition cost. And per customer, you might spend like $5, $10 and be under and still have a successful campaign depending on your goals. So most campaigns that we go into, people want to be profitable. So that's generally the intention. But there are other situations where people just say, hey, I'm ready to invest in launching this brand. I want to build an audience. I want to build publicity. I want to build all these assets, whatever it takes. If we're losing $10 per order, happy to do it because I would have paid way more than $10 to acquire a customer if we're running, whatever it is, Facebook ads or whatever it is that they're trying to acquire customers with.
Yeah, that's a good point too, right? You have to decide, the amount of money that many people spend on ads can often be put elsewhere. And so thinking about, how much you're willing to invest in acquiring that customer could be used in different ways. So this is something I like to ask everybody, is there a common misconception or a myth about what it is that you do that you want to help clear up?
Sure. Yeah. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions about Kickstarter or this type of pre-order launch is that if you have a really good product, people are just going to flood the doors and line up to buy your product. And it's simply not true. You really have to focus on building your community and your audience prior to the campaign, because really the goal here is to build up that audience so that they're supporting you within that initial launch timeframe of 24 to 48 hours. So once you get that going and the algorithm starts noticing your product and your campaign launch, then it can start really kind of pushing some organic traffic your way. But I've seen so many awesome products just fail because I think what they had in their mind was that when they launch, people are just going to love it. And when you see these projects, it's such a shame because they're really, really good products, and they just did a terrible job at preparing for the campaign. So preparing for the campaign and making sure that you're set for launching is more important in many cases than what actually happens during the actual campaign itself. So focusing on pre-launch preparations, building your audience, building your community, that's going to be really, really key for success, regardless of how good your product is.
I love it. That's fantastic advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. I'll be sure to put the link in the notes for everyone. Is there some place where people can follow you or be kept up with what you're doing?
Yeah, just livemyplayground.com. Everything is going to be there, so you can find the links. And
okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Vance. It's been wonderful having you here, and I look forward to seeing how people check out your resources. I think it'll be great for them.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Really, really awesome being here.